Oh, what's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So we are back going to be talking about the Survivor Season 35 live reunion show and finale this episode. Super, super exciting. We both love when new episodes are being released. And so today we're going to talk about the ending of Survivor Season 35. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and this past Wednesday was literally the happiest day of my life. Because I finally finished all my exams. And then I actually got home in time to watch the entire episode, and I was so excited because I was like, my exams are done. I passed the class. I get to watch Survivor. What more could I want out of my life?
Yeah, and it was super exciting. Alyssa and I were finally on the same coast for this, so we were both on Eastern time zone. So I finally got to watch it in like real time without being like maybe spoiled by going on Facebook or something like that. So it was super exciting. Alyssa and I got to like live message each other during the episode, so we were up to date because usually we watch it at different times. So like one of us is busy or something like that. So we usually don't watch it real time. So it was super exciting to watch the finale and have 3 hours of Survivor on Wednesday night. I was just very, very excited. It was a great, great night.
Yeah, it really was. And I feel like the finale episode was definitely like super strong as far as like the drama and everything. So I feel like sometimes finales get really predictable after a certain point, but this one definitely wasn't. So I was happy about that.
Yeah, I feel like overall we've been seeing a lot of like sort of relations between this season and sort of season white collar, no collar, blue collar, sort of like Mike going and then winning the season, whereas like Mike was sort of like, oh, he's the powerhouse. People wanted to vote him out. He found a lot of idols, and then he ended up making it final three, and like Carolyn was runner up, and then here we see Chrissy be runner up. So I feel like there are some correlations where you have this like strong player in like a Mike or a Ben with this season, and then there's sort of like the one that everyone wants to get at, but then they end up like never getting the chance to get at, or they're like truly one of the only really deserving players to win the game, or like to make it to final to win the game.
Yeah, I was really happy with this final three just because I feel like the only players I wouldn't really want to win of the final five would be Mike and Ryan. So I'm really happy that they did a final three and not a final two, just because that would allow possibly the two players who like weren't the best to like go up against each other, but that didn't happen. I was super excited about that. But at the beginning of this episode, I really did not expect Ben to like get to the final three. Like I kept being like, "Oh, I really hope he does. I really hope he does." But it was crazy.
Yeah, I think like Alyssa just said, the finale episode was very interesting. You know, Ben had a very uphill battle throughout the whole entire 2 hours to make it to final tribal council. And, you know, it wasn't like super predictable. Like we saw two really great tribal councils come out of it, a lot of strategy, two super interesting immunity challenges that we saw this episode as well. So I think overall, just in general, like, the episode was really good. I mean, we saw like a lot of things. Idols played blindsides. Like, it was a good episode.
It definitely was. And this episode started with yet another idol find.
Yeah, so Ben finds another idol like beginning of this episode throughout like the first hour of the show, and like throughout this time Alyssa and I were messaging like these people are saying like, okay, someone should go follow him, blah blah blah, like I wonder where he is, and then like nobody follows him, and like 24/7 there's four of you and one of him like set up shifts to, you know, follow him, and I feel like $1 million mistake on the other four. If you just prevented Ben from finding the idol, you could have had a final three where, you know, maybe Devin made it to the end in one, or Chrissy made it to the end in one. But I feel like $1 million mistake letting Ben go off by himself, and like not having that foresight of like Ben could find another fucking idol.
Yeah, and like hopping forward a little bit to the final tribal council, when Desi was like, "Why weren't you guys following him?" I was like, "Thank you for asking this," especially because like this was still a problem for them like 2 episodes ago when they had 6 other people to follow Ben, and it's like there are 6 other people, 24 hours. You each only have to take 4-hour shifts. Like that's not that long to be watching someone, and it's like. It's been shown that if you babysit someone, it's really hard for them to find an idol. Like Andrea did it to Malcolm, and he didn't get to find his idol. He went home. And it's like, guys, common sense.
Exactly, because like people on the bottom, desperate people who don't want to go home, and the only way for you to not go home is to either win immunity or find an idol. Like you're going to go balls to the wall, like give everything that you have to find an idol, and like it paid off for Ben. Like good for Ben. He is very deserving of like winning and finding the idol, because like staying up all night long, you have to have drive, and I think kudos, like 3 idols in a row, that's a lot of like effort looking. And I think like a lot of people are sort of like downplaying it, maybe sort of saying like, oh, like he probably only looked for like 10 minutes and like producers gave him the idol. But like you saw the sequence, it was dark when he was looking, and then when he found it, like the sun was just rising kind of thing. And so it's like the other 4, I feel like if like you just have to have all your bases covered. If you're all like, oh my God, what if he finds it, blah, blah, blah. Like, the only way to prevent him to 100% make sure that he doesn't have it is to watch him. But you guys didn't watch him.
Yeah, and I thought it was really funny when they like had their whole like fake idol scheme, because I was like, would be an even better plan than trying to fake him out with a fake idol? Actually not letting him find the idol. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so Chrissy uses like her super idol from like the first few episodes. It's like uses it as a fake idol, and this was just so funny. Alyssa and I were messaging, but like first, okay, like it's a good idea, like, oh, okay, have a fake idol so it prevents Ben from like going to look for the idol, for like a hidden immunity idol, because Ben would think that like, okay, the idol's been found, like there we go. But it's like it's going to be so funny because Ben already has the idol. So Ben says something along the lines of, now I don't need to even look for idols anymore, like you all just made my job easier. And
it's
so
funny because it like actually made his job easier that they had this like fake idol, and I was like, oh my goodness.
yeah, so Ben doesn't have to look for or waste his time and energy looking for fake idols anymore. And like, there we go, Ben's in the clear because he has a hidden immunity idol, and like he sort of makes a fool out of everyone else by like having this idol and always being one step ahead. And yeah, and then basically Ben is the one deciding sort of who gets to go home between Mike and Devin, because like he said, Ryan is sort of useless. He can't do shit. So like you wouldn't vote Ryan out of like that final 5. So it's between Mike and Devin, and I think Alyssa and I, you can like predict that coming. Like Ryan, yeah, he's brought to the end basically, so you're not voting him out at final 5.
Yeah, I thought also at the final 5, it was really great for Devin to like be thinking ahead of all the just in cases, because if Devin hadn't thought to like give Dr. Mike a throwaway vote, then Devin would have gone home.
Yeah, I think, it was super exciting tribal council. Like everyone's reactions was so funny to like the whole fake idol thing, to Ben doing another Ben bomb and pulling out the real idol. And I think, 100% really, really good for Devin. I feel like he is one of the better players this season. Besides Ben, I think I would have been very happy with a Devin win or a Ben win. And Stephen Fishback thinks Devin was one of the best players this season as well. So there's that. But yeah, I think really, really good for Devin. Like, go with your gut is what he was said. And I feel like 100% on Survivor. I mean, you might as well go with your gut, because it's sort of a win-win situation. Like, okay, for Devin, voting Mike, Sure, if Mike isn't the one to go home and Ben doesn't have an idol, Ben goes home. You have this sort of like awkwardness between Mike and Devin before the final three, but like Mike has never won an immunity challenge, like stuff like that. Like it's not too big of a deal. I think you can do some like reconciling to try to fix that relationship. But then like, you know, if you do vote Mike and Ben does have the idol like we saw happen in the episode, like you prevent yourself from going home. So I feel like in this situation, you sort of have to just throw away your vote and vote it for the other person you think is going to go home.
Yeah, and I feel like if Dr. Mike did get mad at Devin for like voting for him, like if Dr. Mike was like, "Oh my God, Devin, why'd you vote for me?" then I feel like Devin still could have been like, "Ryan and Chrissy, how about you help me vote Mike out?" Just because it's like Dr. Mike thinks that he's really good at the game, but he's not really. So.
Yeah, I think like the difference between like Dr. Mike and Devin is that like in post interviews we see Dr. Mike say like, okay, you know, I was talking to Ryan and I was thinking about voting Devin at Tribal Council, but the difference between the two is that Devin actually went through with this plan of, you know, tossing a vote at Mike just in case Ben has an idol, and whereas Mike doesn't like go with his gut and doesn't write Devin's name down, because if Mike did write Devin's name down like he was thinking about or planning to, you know, Devin would have had 2 votes and Devin would have went home. Ben would have also had 2 votes, but he would have played an idol, and like, you know, Devin would have went home. So I really think here is the $1 million loss for Mike, obviously, since he is voted out. But I think if Mike went with his like guts or instinct or whatever and went through with putting another vote on Devin, you know, I think like Mike would still be in the game, really.
Yeah, but I feel like Mike either gets to the final 3 as a go or gets voted out as a goal if he doesn't get voted out in 5th place. So
yeah, I think it'd be interesting. We're going to talk about like maybe other final 3s and, you know, later. And I think, yeah, any combination. I was thinking maybe a Mike, Chrissy, Ryan final 3. I think Chrissy wins. I really don't see Mike or Ryan winning in any scenario. I think it gets more up in the air when it's like a Chrissy, Devin, maybe Ryan final 3 between Chrissy and Devin. But like, yeah, I really don't see any scenario really where Mike or Ryan walk away at Final Tribal Council Sole Survivor. So I think, yeah, even if, yeah, so Devin and Mike tie, and then, you know, Chrissy and Ryan, I feel like wouldn't vote Devin out. I think the fatal flaws for Chrissy and Ryan this season were sort of that they were very cocky and not like super self-aware, I feel like, in their placement on their tribe or how they're treating other people. And so I feel like they wouldn't vote Devin out because I feel like he was very underestimated, you know, as like, he's just like the surfer dude, like not that smart kind of thing. And I think that also goes to show, you know, how good Devin is, because Devin in like exit interviews was saying, you know, like I really play up the whole like dumb surfer thing to try to be underestimated, like to be looked down upon as like not as smart as he is. So I really, really like, I think Devin is a good player in the game, and, you know, I would like to see him play again, and I think, yeah.
I feel like I'd like to see a lot of these players play again. So, yeah.
Any thoughts on Devin?
Devin, I feel like if Devin did get to the final 3, he'd have a hard time convincing people that he was the like powerhouse, especially if he was sitting besides Ryan, because they'd kind of have the same situation as Chrissy and Ryan did, I feel like, where they'd constantly be like undermining and contradicting each other. Because we talked about this last episode, how Chrissy and Ryan's games were very intertwined, but I also feel like Devin and Ryan's definitely were. I feel like the thing with Devin is he's more likable than Ryan, and he also like made relationships outside of his relationship with Ryan. like his whole idea of Ben becoming like the double agent thing, like that would have been a really great move on his Survivor resume. So I feel like if the final three was Chrissy, Ryan, Devin instead of Chrissy, Ryan, Ben, then I feel like it definitely would have been a lot closer to a tie, or possibly even like a real tie.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. Yeah, I think what Devin has going over Ryan is like the whole once Devin started not trusting Ryan anymore and did that whole split with the four of like Ashley, Devin, Lauren, and Ben. I think that would be like Devin's sort of shining moment of like separating himself from Chrissy and Ryan to show that, you know, I wasn't like totally tailgate or like coattailing these people, but like I made my own moves kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I feel like also it seems like, you know, maybe Devin isn't the best with words. I feel like in the final tribal like jury question Socratic seminar thing, you know, Devin really didn't talk that much in exit interviews. He seems sort of very like, I don't know, like meh when he's answering questions. So, you know, maybe he's just not a good speaker, but he did look very good at the reunion show.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things is I feel like it's really difficult for Devin to speak on the jury. Like, I always think the last person voted out before the final tribal council always has the hardest time with the final tribal council just because their loss is still the most fresh. So.
Yeah, and you know, like he wasn't hanging out in Ponderosa, whereas like Desi had X amount of days to like talk to everyone and like really like be okay with the outcome of the game and like stuff like that. And so I feel like, yeah, like being voted out one or two spots right before final tribal council, you don't have that time to like self look into yourself, I guess, to be okay with the outcomes and to like be in a mindset, I guess, to like keep talking about the game because you were just in the game and everything is so fresh, whereas everyone else has had the opportunity to sort of like step out of the game and realize that like life is going to move on.
Yeah, I feel like what I read some stuff that Chrissy did in her like after Survivor thing, and I thought that Chrissy was actually very good about the whole like finding closure despite not winning thing. And she was talking a lot about how like for everyone who's voted out before the final three, it's easy because you know what place you come in and you can like make peace with that. But like when you're in the final three, you don't know whether you're first, second, or third until the night of the finale. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I guess like, you know, then sort of the game gets dragged on from like filming in May to like if it airs in the fall or if it airs in the spring. And then having to like watch it all again on TV when like you sort of know it's still all up in the air because you are at final tribal council.
Yeah. I thought that in general, it was really interesting for me going back to like the immunity challenges. It was really interesting to me to see like literally just how big of a difference being good at puzzles makes and being able to win immunity. Like not saying that Chrissy isn't a physical player because like she's like I would say decently physical. Like she's not like Joe Anglin, but she's also not like Stephen Fishback. So I feel like the fact that she was able to win 4 immunity challenges shows that she has a really sharp mind. And even more than that, it's supported by her physical play because it's like if someone else gets to the puzzle before you do and they've solved the puzzle before you do because you're like too busy like wobbling on a balance beam, then that's not a good thing. So like props to Chrissy for being able to win so many immunity challenges because she's now one of the 4 women who have won 4 individual immunities.
Yeah, and I think like we've said a lot of times with like puzzles at the end of challenges, like puzzle is the great equalizer. You only have to be like semi-athletic or at least like up with the pack sort of everyone else, and then at the puzzle, even if like you're the last one to the puzzle, as we saw sometimes happen with Chrissy, you're able to catch up because you're just so good at puzzles that you're able to like figure it out super quickly. So you technically don't have to be like as athletic as everyone else as long as you're not like super unfit, but as long as you can hold your own in the athletic portion of the challenge, and then you can actually make it to the puzzle to have a fighting shot, then like you're golden. So anyone going to go on Survivor, practice your puzzles, because like we saw this season, puzzle wins you the challenge if there's a puzzle.
And the thing is about puzzles, like, it's not just about being able to memorize that, like, 5-piece tangram that we, like, did a video on, or being able to know the strategy for solving slide puzzles. Because while those are important, like, they're always introducing new puzzles onto the show. Like we saw, one of the immunity challenges was a brand new puzzle that you're never going to be able to prepare for because, like, no one's ever seen it before. So doing puzzles is more like a state of mind and being able to think elastically rather than like being able to just memorize the answers.
Yeah, so it's like practicing your mind, making your mind open to like thinking outside the box, trying new possibilities, like being able to sort of envision a few steps ahead, because puzzles, you definitely want to like vision the end goal and then like work your way to this end goal.
Yeah. And I feel like that puzzle, especially the one with the twisty bits, is the one that I'm talking about. Is really interesting because I feel like a lot of the contestants didn't take time to look at it like before they started moving things. And it's like, I feel like sometimes with puzzles, if you take a deep breath before starting them, the extra like 3 seconds that you take to gain mental clarity is going to be what you need. Like the 3 seconds are better spent like focusing yourself and getting ready to do the puzzle than just randomly moving stuff that could end up hurting you anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, with the challenges, the ball puzzle that we saw as the first immunity challenge, you know, let us know if you want us to do a video on it. I think like we can make the challenge with like marbles and like twisty things. So let us know, because Alyssa and I are looking for videos to do over the hiatus, some of those DIY tutorial videos, and shameless self-promo. If you haven't seen the Tower of Hanoi video that was last seen in Survivor South Pacific, I uploaded it like 2 videos ago, so you should definitely check that out. Me and my friend ended up being able to do that puzzle in less than a minute, so you should totally watch it. But yeah, with the puzzles, I think anything with a puzzle, like we said, just let Chrissy win it. She's too dominant with puzzles. And then I think the second immunity challenge with the spelling of the heroes, hustlers, healers, was very stressful to watch.
Yeah, that bothered me so much just because, like, I could not understand how, like, it clicked in or clicked out or whatever. Like, I would have been so trash at that, like, challenge. And then, like, Ben having his U upside down. And a lot of people are really upset because one of Chrissy's S's was upside down in her final puzzle. And so they were like, oh my gosh, rigged.
Yeah.
And
I was seeing that on like the Survivor Facebook pages, and you know, I sort of want to see the rules for this challenge. What counts as upside down? What doesn't count as upside down, etc. Because like some people's arguments are like an upside down U doesn't spell hustlers, because a U upside down obviously isn't the same as like a U upside up, whereas an S upside down is basically the same thing as an S right side up. So I don't know. It was a good challenge, but definitely I feel like with stuff like that, it opens a door to more people saying that this season, or at least the final 3, was rigged, more than people are already saying it, which is sort of annoying. Like, why can't you just, this is Survivor, the jury picks, and this is who the jury picked. Like, everyone is like, the producers, you know, handpicked Ben, gave him idols, made the twist at the end so Ben could get the final tribal council. But it's like, up to a certain extent, I feel like you just have to let fate, or like the Survivor gods made this happen, like, and it's already happened. It's not like you're gonna go back in time and like, okay, Devin made final 3, like, this is the outcome. I feel like you have to accept it.
yeah, I think this season has really been eye-opening for me as far as, like, after Ko Wrong, I was really upset that Aubrey didn't win, but I think that, like, now I can understand why people were like, oh, if the jury doesn't pick you, Aubrey didn't, or you didn't deserve to win thing, just because people are saying the same thing about Chrissy and Ben. And this episode, I was definitely Team Ben. I've been Team Ben for a while. So I thought it was interesting, like, how the tables can turn as far as, like, I don't know. It's just interesting to me where people are like, Chrissy was robbed or whatever, because it's like if Chrissy had been the better player than Ben, she would have won whether or not Ben was on the final tribal council with her.
Yeah, and that's, I think, like, the beauty of Survivor, you know? Like, you vote these people out, and then these people pick the winner, the sole survivor of the season, and I feel like, you know, if you didn't want the winner to be up to chance like that, okay, Jeff Probst picks the winner, but then it's still arbitrary, like the jury picking the winner. You could do a popular vote or whatever, but like to pick the winner at the end of the season, but then it's who's the most popular, stuff like that. And there's so many different things that goes into like who wins Survivor, you know, the whole outwit, outlast, outplay. But like there's so much more. I think it's very, very complicated. And you know, the jury picks, and that's how this game goes. And if you're unhappy with leaving it up to chance or letting, you know, people who have played the game and voted out pick the winner, like watch a different show. There's no need to be super butthurt and like trying to fight everyone online about like the outcome of a show that has already happened. It has already aired. You're not going to go back in time and be like, okay, Russell Hantz is winning season 19 and 20. Like, sucks for you all, but we want to go back and change it now because, like, Russell was a better player. But, like, the jury picked Natalie. The jury picked, like, Russell not to win for a reason. So it's like, you know, I don't know. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah. And I really liked the final tribal council just because, like, in addition to people, like, getting to defend their game or whatever, I feel like a lot of the jurors, like, had some nuggets of wisdom. Like, Desi said something about, like, this is just a game. Everyone needs to step back and, like, realize that for a second because, and then she's like, you can still trust people outside of this game. And I thought that was really interesting because, like, I've read a lot of, like, Survivor press where this people are like, it's really affected my personal life because I'm still not really sure who I can trust. And so I thought it was really interesting that Desi chose the middle of the final tribal council to say that as opposed to, like, waiting for, like, the quote-unquote closing statements. And I also feel like with this final tribal council, Ben has at least part of his win owed to Joe because Joe, I feel like if Ben hadn't given his like final speech or whatever, I feel like Chrissy would have won. But I feel like Joe like lit a fire under Ben, and that was like the last little bit of oomph that he needed to like win the season.
Yeah, so I feel like going back, I think let's talk about the twist, and then we can do like tribal council and then the jury speaking, because I also have things to say about that. But I think the twist is something that really like sets up the final tribal council and the Socratic seminar jury stuff. And I think the twist is something that, you know, is more controversial this season. I guess a lot of people have their problems with this as well. And, you know, just in general, is it good or bad? I think this episode, as we saw in the finale, I think the twist gives too much power to the person who wins the final immunity challenge, and then who wins and has, and then the winner of the fire challenge has too much power as well. So basically, the winner of the twist gets the handpick a loser basically to go to the final three, and then they can set up a nice duel between two competitors. So it's really, really nice for Chrissy. She can pick a person like Ryan, who's never gonna win fire, who like she can probably beat in the end, to bring him to the end with her, and then you have a nice duel. But then the winner of the duel is really, really set up nice for the final tribal council speech, because they can say so much, like, I fought my way to the end, you know, I could have been voted out. So I think Alyssa and I are sort of on the same page as this, but we think, like, winner of the fire challenge basically wins the game. I think, especially this season, Ben wins fire, he wins the game. I think if Devin won the fire challenge, made it to final three, I think Devin could have won the game.
Yeah, I feel like it's so difficult because the person who gets picked to go to the final 3 is almost never, I feel like, going to win because it's like you got dragged here. But I think it's also interesting because Devin was aware of the fact that he could lose the fire challenge, but still was like, yeah, I'm okay with you picking Ryan. And I thought that was really interesting because people are like, oh, Devin was robbed. And it's like, did you not hear the part where he was like, yeah, I'm so excited to get to make my case to the jury and like have this on my resume? Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, so I think twist really good for Ben. Obviously, he wins a fire challenge and then he wins the game. I think really shitty for Devin, obviously, because Devin could have been final 3. Ben would have been the person to go home at the final 4 because everyone was gunning for Ben, and he didn't have an idol because you can't play him after 5. So I think sort of crappy for Devin because he could have made final 3, but I think Devin was a very good sport. He sort of looked at the situation like, this is part of the game, I'll take it as it is. Whereas I feel like someone who was in this position could have been a very big baby about it and been like, no, like, let's fight. Like, why are you taking Ryan to final 3? Like, easiest handpicked way to get to final 3, not even getting voted out, anything like that. Whereas I have to fight for my spot in the final 3. I think, there could have been drama around that if someone wasn't as willing or up to the challenge as like, okay, this is a game. This is how it goes. This is a twist that I am faced with. And it's not like I'm not going to complain about it or like be butthurt about the outcome of it.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things is in Survivor, you sign up for all the twists that production like throws at you. And another thing that I'm annoyed with is people talking about this twist as if it was made specifically for Ben, because it's like they probably had planned this since the beginning of the season. The fact that it happened to benefit Ben, like, is irrelevant.
Yeah, I think in general, I think, if they are doing the twist again, and they definitely said next season, and like in the future, we'll probably see this twist again. So it's not like a one-off thing where Ben's being helped by the Survivor gods, people, but like they are going to do the twist again. I think it really would make the twist interesting if like the people were told like this is a twist that's happening this season, sort of like a few seasons ago, like with no tie votes. Like everyone is aware that if there's a tie, we aren't re-voting. So I think something like this is like you have to announce it at the beginning of the season or once the merge happens. Like, okay, final 4 we're going to fire, so people can use like this twist as like gameplay or strategy, and maybe idols can't be played after final 6 instead of 5, so people can't be like safe all the way up, and like still someone could be voted out at 5. Like a Ben could have been voted out at 5 because no idols were able to be played, and then the duel would happen at 4. So I really think if the twist is happening again, some things have to be changed maybe to like make the twist better or more fair or whatever. But I think, yeah, in general, if it's going to happen again, I would want to see some of these changes maybe. I think like letting everyone know about it, people could use it as a gameplay to be like, okay, I'll pick a loser goat to go to the final 3 with me, send 2 strong people to the duel, that kind of thing, or send 2 losers to the duel because you don't want the winner of the challenge to have a great case for final tribal council, things like that.
I agree with everything you said except for telling the people that it's going to happen, because like it's a twist, like it's not twisty if people know that it's going to happen. Like no one knew on Co Wrong that Michelle was going to be able to vote out a juror. Like I feel like telling people about the twists like doesn't make sense. Like no one's asking that people be told like, oh yeah, you get this is the advantage that's being put out. And I feel like it's just like every other advantage this season. Some of them worked, some of them didn't, but none of them, like all of them were secret. And I feel like it's really easy to forget that there were actually a lot of advantages like this season, where like the only difference with this is, well, actually there is no difference because people just blab about them. So it's like,
Yeah, so I guess it depends if the producers or whoever wants to keep this system of Final Four as like a twist, or just like change the rules of Survivor at the start of a season, like how they did with the tie votes thing, or just like, you know, saying if it is going to be a thing, like changing the rules, like that kind of thing, versus like keeping it as like a twist or an advantage that isn't told. I think that would clear things up, so then people won't be so like butthurt about the situation. But yeah, I don't know. I think fires at Final Four, it seems to be less common recently. I think, you know, in Millennials versus Gen X, they didn't send Adam and David to do a fire challenge because same thing as this episode, winner of that wins a season. I think putting two people that are worthy competitors of winning the $1 million to a fire challenge right before Final Tribal Council isn't the smartest idea, because it like lets that person have a great Final Tribal Council speech, and that's what the jury members remember the most, because it just happened like the night before. So I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of fire at 4, but yeah.
I don't know. I definitely don't want this to become a regular like thing, but I think that like when the final 3 was first introduced, people were like, "Oh, we hate this," and some people still hate it. So I feel like it's one of those things where like the producers are going to continue to change things in the game. Some of them are going to work, some of them aren't. And I feel like getting upset and butthurt about it and being like, it was only in place so that this one player could win is so stupid, because like I feel like there's so much more for Survivor producers to lose by like rigging the game than there is for them to gain. Like, so what if one player they like wins the season? Like if they lose their integrity, then no one's gonna want to watch the show anymore, you know?
Yeah, it's sort of like good ratings for a season, you know, maybe more views, more money coming into CBS, versus like people being angry and never watching the show again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Going into Final Tribal, it's very much of a Ben versus Chrissy kind of dealio. I could see arguments for all three, sort of. I really do feel like because of the whole twist, Ryan is seen as being brought along. I think he's definitely at the worst spot to be in, because he's always being taken on things this season. He didn't win like rewards, and he was still brought on rewards with like Chrissy and Devin we saw last time, or like, you know, he's just not winning. He's brought on the family visit, he's brought on all these things, but he's never really winning for himself. He's just sort of along for the ride, and like being brought along to Final 3 definitely hurt him very much.
Yeah, I feel like one of the most dangerous things you can be seen as on Survivor is a coattail rider, and Ryan is like pretty much the definition of that. Like, I thought it was really interesting because he got a really, really strong like pre-merge edit, but then as soon as the merge came, I felt like Ryan kind of like disappeared. So I thought it was interesting to see, like, if you had asked before the merge if I had thought Ryan had a chance of winning, I would have said yeah, but like as the episodes went on, I feel like his chances got worse and worse.
Yeah, I feel like before the merge, we were like, okay, wow, like it's the Chrissy Ryan show. This is sort of like really annoying. And then once the merge hit, it was more of like the Ben, sort of like Devin, Lauren show. And Chrissy and Ryan sort of fell into like the lesser spotlight, which I guess is interesting. And I think Chrissy, she's a good talker. I think Ben, not so much because of his like profession, whereas Chrissy is a well-spoken lady, so she definitely had the upper hand, I feel like, at Tribal Council. But I don't know. I feel like comparatively, if you wanted to compare Chrissy and Ben in terms of like wins or and stuff like that this season, you know, Chrissy with her 4 immunity wins, Ben from 3 idols, both went from the bottom of an alliance, went to the bottom of their alliance after they were on the top. So I feel like in terms of that, they are pretty equal. I think Chrissy didn't have good jury management, and that's like her flaw.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because at the final tribal council, like people basically told all of the final 3 that they had horrible social games. And when Joe was trying to ask Chrissy like to like prove that she had a good social game. It felt like she was reciting facts about people rather than like having any sort of genuine connection with them. Which, side note, Cole's ACT score was a 34. Like, what?
Yum. Dude's actually smart in real life.
Yeah. I was just, well.
No, yeah, I don't know. I feel like Chrissy, like we've said, her sort of flaw in the game is like lack of awareness, maybe social ineptitude. Didn't really have good jury management. I think Ben had more of a story that we saw at Final Tribal Council, which was interesting that we've seen like stories are more common with like Jeremy, Adam Klein. But it seemed like this jury, like they said they didn't care about the little things like the facts about your gameplay, but they wanted to see the big picture. Like, what did you do? What did you deserve to win? And with the Socratic seminar style, like, I really like this style. I think it allows for more like communication and talking between like the jurors and the people vying for the $1 million.
I also really like this because it allows like actual discussion as opposed to people just like, I feel like a lot of the time with the like question answer Final Tribal Council, it allowed like people to kind of rehearse because the questions were always the same. And I felt like this time it actually allowed the jurors to like critique the players' games as opposed to just like saying one thing about it. Because like one of the things that I really liked, like I said earlier in this podcast, was like Desi calling Chrissy and Ryan out for like not like following Ben and keeping him from finding idols and stuff, and then her saying that thing about like you can trust people in the game. And Cole actually had some really great points too that I was like somewhat surprised by.
Yeah, I think through the jury speaking, we see Ryan like roasted pretty much throughout the jury questions, and I think maybe Ryan had a more behind the scenes game to say maybe. But yeah, I think it's definitely hard for someone who has a more sort of like laid back or behind the scenes game to be like have tangible evidence of stuff you've done, because I feel like a lot of what Ryan was saying is like, oh yeah, like I had social game, but it was through Devin, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I feel like it's hard to prove or justify. And when you're talking about things like pre-merge, like nobody cares about that. Nobody saw that. So I feel like you have to talk about things post-merge where it's like, okay, you have to be a decent Survivor player to make it to the merge. And then that's where you build your resume and that's where people see your gameplay.
It was really interesting to me just because I like that like the contestants can kind of talk over each other, but Ryan and Chrissy were just doing so much talking. And I mean, part of it is I read in like an exit interview with Ben that he thought that like being calm and laid back would make him look better to the jury, but like as a viewer for a while I was like, oh my gosh, Ben isn't gonna win if he doesn't talk.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Chrissy definitely talked way too much at Final Tribal Council. I feel like every time a question was asked to like Ben or Ryan, Chrissy had to be like, "Can I talk to?" And like she would put in her like saying or something like that. If Ryan talked, like Chrissy would chime in and like try to fight with Ryan or something like that. So I feel like her trying to answer every question or like put her fingers into like every single conversation at the Final Tribal was just like not too good of a look. I think Ben, he owned up to more of the moves that he made better than I feel like Chrissy and Ryan did. I feel like Chrissy just wanted people to suck up to her and like be like, oh my God, yeah, 4 immunities, like you're so great kind of thing. And like Ryan was just trying to like fight everyone. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like Ben had a good like, yeah, this was my move. I own up to it. Like I had to vote you out, Cole, because you are a big threat. Whereas Chrissy wanted people to be like, haha, like female power. Like, yes, that's good, but like, what are your moves? Like winning 4 immunities, great. What are your moves? Ryan, what are your moves?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because like they constantly kept trying to undermine each other where Ryan was like, no, Ben, that's not why you did that. And it's like, I feel like one of the hardest things about Final Tribal Council is that only one person is ever going to know what their true intentions were in doing something. And so, like, I could tell you, oh, I did this for this reason. And I could tell someone else I did it for another reason. And I could tell a third person I did it for a third reason. But I'm going to be the only one who knows the real reason that I did it. So I feel like it's really difficult when people are like, oh, that's not why you did it. Because it's like, yeah, it was.
Yeah, and it's like what Ryan said before Final Tribal Council. He's like, blah, 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 blah. I didn't do these things, but I'm going to lie and try to make it come across that I did do these things. So, I mean, it's all a game of, like, he said, she said. Like, you never really know what's sort of true and not true. And I think, you know, Cole was the only male to win immunity this season. You know, I think that's super crazy. I think when they called out Ryan for not really doing anything around camp, that was warranted. Ryan was like, yeah, I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. But, like, why don't you try to make fire? Why don't you try to do these things? You're on Survivor to gain this experience. Okay, you've never been camping before, so I have a lot of people on this season, but like Mike tried and made fire, Desi tried and she's not in her element. So it's like, yes, call him the fuck out about that. Like, try. You're on the show for a reason. Why are you just sitting around?
Yeah, I feel like instead of excusing his mistakes, that made it like even more untenable.
Yeah. And I think Chrissy, you know, she had a lot of good talk about the female power. And I was like, yeah, that's good. I think 47 years old, 4 immunity winners ever. And like all of them were like in their 20s when they won 4 immunity challenge. So I think like, yeah, good for Chrissy. Like that is great. I think halfway through Final Tribal Council, I was like, you know, oh shit, Chrissy has some really good points. You know, maybe she could win this season. But then I think closing speeches, Ryan, when he was asked, like, what did you learn? He was like, I learned a lot about myself. I was like, okay, you're not winning. Bye. Ben talking about PTSD and his family, definitely, I think was really good. And then Chrissy bringing in, like, the mom as a healer, hustler, and a hero. And, yeah, I don't know. I feel like Chrissy definitely could have won this season if she wasn't with playing with another player like Ben. I think if Chrissy had gotten Ben out or like was the Ben of the season, Chrissy definitely could have won. But I feel like because there was someone, you know, better or like who the jury thought was more deserving of the win, that was that. But I think Chrissy in like an alternate universe could have won.
I think it's really interesting because a lot of people are upset with Ben's win because they think he only won because of his like whole PTSD story. And like people kind of said the same thing about Adam and his season and how like he only won because his mom had cancer, blah, 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 blah. And I feel like it's so interesting because people are like, your story shouldn't be the reason why you win Survivor. But I feel like part of it is you play Survivor because you have a story. Like no one like wakes up one day and thinks to themselves, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna starve on an island for 39 days. Like there's a reason that you do that. And I feel like neglecting the reason by saying that like, oh, so and so shouldn't have won because they like didn't just come for their love of the game or whatever is kind of silly because it's like that's the exact opposite of what like should be happening because people come to play Survivor because they love it or because of something, and that shouldn't be discounted.
Yeah, like betterment for your family, betterment for XYZ, proving something. You know, there's a ton of reasons. And I think a lot of people are also sort of maybe talking about, you know, are females viewed differently on Survivor? And I think that's a topic that is definitely warranting conversation around because Alyssa and I did a video about like gender stereotypes, gender roles on Survivor. And like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there are sort of double standards, I guess, for different people on Survivor, but it's not even just with gender, you know, people of color, LGBTQ, like there's a ton of different things. And I think, you know, that's Survivor. It's a great social game. You're putting all these strangers together, different backgrounds, socioeconomic, everything like that. And I feel like just blaming Chrissy losing because she is a female sort of is like there's a ton of factors that go into the game that go into a winner. I don't think you can blame Chrissy's loss solely based on her gender.
I agree wholeheartedly because, like, there were some things about Chrissy that, like, really annoyed me, and I consider myself, like, a feminist. Ooh, dirty word, I know. But, like, I feel like it's really interesting when people, like, want to make excuses just because I feel like that's another thing that bothered me about like the whole thing with people crying that like, oh, the Final Four thing was rigged for Ben. Like I feel like that's just an excuse because they didn't like Ben and they wanted an excuse why he wasn't a good enough winner, you know?
Yeah, and I think, like we've said, Ben definitely is probably the most deserving to win this season, one of the better players this season. I think I would have been happy, like I said, with a Devin win as well. And so we see the final vote turn out to be a 5-2-1, 5 for Ben, 2 for Chrissy, 1 for Ryan. Yeah, Devin votes Ryan, which was interesting and we can talk about, and Mike and Ashley vote Chrissy.
We already kind of talked about this, Rachel and I did, like when we were talking on the night of the finale, but I totally feel like Devin wasted his vote by voting for Ryan. And I feel like that was more like a vote out of loyalty, like, oh, we played this whole game together and now I'm going to vote for you to win type thing, than actually believing that Ryan had played the best game. So, but I thought it was good that like everyone got a vote. Like it was nice to see that there were no 0 vote finalists.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's sort of interesting looking back at it now. I think a lot of like seasons we've seen recently, we see like a unanimous winner or like one person getting a majority of the votes and then the other two sort of like maybe 2 votes and then a shutout. So I feel like Devin voting Ryan, it is interesting. I feel like good for him, you know, not going with the whole like status quo of like, okay, the majority is probably voting Ben, I'll just vote Ben also, but sort of voting for someone who you know isn't going to win this season, but has played a good game, just like kudos for like making it 39 days kind of thing. And I think it could be an interesting strategy, like we saw it in San Juan del Sur with Reed purposefully not voting Missy at the end, and then voting Jacqueline over. Yeah, so then Jacqueline would be second place, Missy would definitely be third place, and I think that's interesting because maybe you just 100% don't want like this first runner-up, second runner-up to be tied, and you definitely want it to be distinct, sort of like yeah, like Mike getting first place, Carolyn getting second place, and like no one in hell wants Will to be tied with Carol, so you have to sort of like put votes on other people to prevent like someone like Will, who was a total fucker, from like being the same rank as like a first runner-up.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it's kind of like all sentimentality at that point. Like, even though you know, like, oh, Carolyn isn't going to win, it's like I said, interesting about the whole sentimentality bit of it.
Yeah, so like, Ryan isn't gonna win, but like, kudos, deserving of a vote. Like, you made it that far, kind of thing. And it's like interesting to see people not go with the status quo. I think it was interesting, Mike voting Chrissy. I think that is something like people wouldn't suspect, I guess.
Yeah, I thought that Ben was going to win. What was it? I thought Ben was going to win 5-3. I think he won 5-2 to 1, but I got who he was going to get votes from wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I can see Ashley voting Chrissy because in Ashley's Ponderosa, she was very like gung ho about like female power and like there's not that many females that made it far in this season, which also goes to other facts. And I think Chrissy had a hand in putting a lot of the other females out of this season. But I don't know. I think Ben as a winner, like, yes, he was deserving, but I feel like halfway, through the season, I was sort of like, I don't really want to root for Ben because it's sort of obvious that he's going to win, sort of with a Mike kind of thing. It's like they're just too, like, maybe in your face about the winner, and it's like with white collar, no collar, blue collar, like Mike maybe Carolyn were the only two people like deserving of the win. Obviously, you don't want Will to win or any of those other people. So it's like Mike needs to win because everyone else in this season is sort of crappy. So I feel like maybe it's the sort of thing this season where, like Alyssa and I have said, like halfway throughout the season, there's not really that many super, I guess, likable people. I feel like as the season went on, there's more people you could root for. But like even with the finale, I was like, even when Devin went home, like I really like Devin, but I wasn't going to like cry over it or like be like butthurt about it. Like when Suri gets voted out with no votes, like I cried about that. Like there's no one you're like super emotionally invested in.
Yeah, and I feel like part of that is the fact that it's a newcomer season and not a returnee one. But I also think it's really interesting just because I thought that like you said, as the season like came on or went on, there were more people that I was like, okay, like this person could win and I could be okay with it. But I think it's really interesting because I would have liked seeing those storylines develop like sooner, and I just didn't understand why there was a lot of focus on like Ryan earlier in the season when it's like he's not really a player later in the season. Like it's like just confusing to me how they decided to edit some of it.
I feel like after the Ally vote, Ryan was sort of like just there on the season. I think Chrissy, like I said, could have won the season or won a season in this game if there was no Ben or Devin. I think Chrissy, final three with Mike and Ryan, she could have won, but I feel like a Devin, Chrissy, Ryan final three, it would have been closer, but I think Devin could have pulled that out. And I think Mike in a final three, I just don't see Mike or Ryan winning this season. So I feel like definitely the three people who could have won would be Chrissy, Devin, and Ben. And, you know, Ben came out the lucky one with his final three. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think this season, all in all, was kind of like middle of the pack for me because it was just like it definitely took a while to get to a place where I was like, okay, this is a decent Survivor season. Like if we hadn't been doing this podcast, I feel like I probably would have stopped watching halfway through the season just because it just wasn't very like enamoring.
Yeah, and that's like a lot of our friends, like we said, a lot of our friends who we usually like watch the show with or like talk to the show, talk about the show with, you know, they stopped watching. So it's like you don't really have anyone to talk to about the season because like people aren't keeping up to date, people aren't watching, and you know, maybe it just goes to show that like the season wasn't as good as others or like wasn't as like fan focused or like people couldn't like have people to root for. And I think yeah.
Yeah, I think everything you just said is true.
Yeah, so I don't know, like going into the reunion show, I definitely think it maybe like goes to show that like they didn't talk to anyone at the reunion show. So I was like, okay, well, I would have loved to hear, you know, maybe from like Ali or like someone like that who we haven't seen in a long time who wasn't at Ponderosa, so we didn't get a Ponderosa video. Like, are Jessica and Cole still together? I would have wanted to know, but like they didn't talk there to anyone or ask anything. So I was sort of like, this isn't a reunion show.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because they kept showing videos of the season, and it's like, yes, I just finished watching this. Thanks for the reminder that I'd like clawed my way through this entire season.
Yeah, they were like showing recaps. Like, yes, the recap about, okay, these are Ben's moves. Like, that was good because it sort of reminds people, like, this is why Ben won this season. But then, like, all the other things, I'm like, we just watched a season. It's not like I forgot from this past week to this week what happened, like that kind of thing. I think I sort of liked how they sort of talked to the people that got voted out as they were voted out. So we saw Devin get talked to and Mike get talked to when they were voted out 5th and 4th. But then, you know, I would have wanted to talk to like Joe or something like that. Like, why did this reunion show change to be like this? Because I feel like a lot of people have complained in the past about the reunion show, like not talking to enough people and like only focusing on like the final 5, and now they change it so like they don't focus on anyone, and it's just like people like, oh, the contestants are dressed nicely and they're all here, but like there's nothing happening. Like at least they didn't bring Sia onto the stage or like Cochran out, but like nothing was happening.
Yeah, I thought I was just kind of confused. Just because, like, it doesn't... I realized that the reunion show was going to be short because it was, like, basically 10 o'clock and Final Tribal had only just started. But I didn't think that it was going to be short and useless. Like, I would have gone to bed if I had known that that was going to be it.
Yeah, so I was like, what is happening? Because, like, yeah, Final Tribal Council started at, like, 10, and then, you know, it went till, like, 10:20, 10:25, and then we, like, that was it, and then we, like, they called out Ben's family, they called out his, like, veteran friends. I was like, okay, this is great, but, like, it doesn't really mean much to a viewer because we don't know these people, whereas, you know, we just spent 3 months watching the season, and like I would have wanted to talk to some of the people on the reunion show.
Yeah, I think part of it might have been that, like, people, like, that the producers knew that people weren't happy with the fact that Ben had won because they might have wanted to avoid anyone being like, oh, Ben didn't deserve to win or whatever. But I don't know. My favorite part of the reunion show is like getting to hear from people and stuff. So I was a little bummed by the lack of reunion.
Yeah, like how was your life after the show? What has changed? Like, are you together? Are you not together? Like, these are the burning questions that I would have loved to have answered. Or like, why did Ryan flip on Allie? You know, are they still bitter? Are Allie and Patrick still bitter? Like, was Lauren angry about being voted out with 1 vote? Like, why?
Yeah. We're going to be doing a separate video about like the next season's theme, but I did think that getting to see like a little snippet of the next season was good, even though we didn't see any of the contestants, like, for real. So
Yeah, so I think who we want to see play again this season, I have like 5 people. I was thinking like Devin, I'd want to see play again. Yes, Joe I think would be interesting. I think Joe and Mike could be brought back for a returning player season because I like to like juxtapose people like in Heroes versus Villains. A lot of people were like juxtapositions of one another, so I feel like Joe and Mike could be brought back together. Allie, I would want to see play again. I think she was very good pre-merge before she was voted out. And then I think, you know, Lauren, I think she surprised a lot of people being an older woman making it so far. And I think, you know, she has a good head on her shoulders.
yeah, I would say that of the people on this season, I'd want Lauren, Joe, Allie, Jessica, Desi, and Ben to come back. Because even though we didn't really see a lot of Desi, like, in the actual game, I thought that, like, her comments at the Final Tribal Council were very telling of the fact that, like, she at least understands Survivor, you know? Like, I was really disappointed that we didn't see a lot of her this season.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think we've covered everything that I wanted to say, which is great because I always forget something.
Yeah, so I guess in general, like Alyssa said, we're going to be doing videos over hiatus. Yay! So we have some videos planned, some more Google Hangouts. We want to do a Survivor Season 36 theme reaction because honestly, I'm sort of confused about this theme. So we have a lot of videos coming up, so stay tuned. Let us know in the comments if there's anything you want to see us do. We're doing some of those DIY challenges, making some of those things, redoing some of the ones that we've done. But yeah, if you want to see any videos, have any comment suggestions, anything about the finale, let us know down below.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye.
Yay.